am going to take you back to March 6, 2009, in Geneva, Switzerland, where Hillary Clinton, back then US Secretary of State, met with Sergei Lavrov, who was the Russian foreign minister. She gave him a gesture gift, a goodwill gift, with the symbol of a red button. It meant to signify the reset of the US Russia relations. The button was supposed to be labeled with the Russian word for reset. And don't, my friends Russians, please don't kill me if I mispronounce it. It's called perezagruska. Perezagruska. That's the word, the Russian word for reset. However, it was incorrectly labeled with peregruska, which actually means overload or overcharged. Well, the reaction was that Lavrov pointed out the error with a smile, saying, "You got it wrong." But despite the mistake, obviously, both officials laughed about it and the meeting continued without further issue. While the error did not really or did not have a significant diplomatic fallout, it was an embarrassing moment that highlighted the importance of accuracy and attention to details in diplomatic protocol. So, you guessed it, today's episode, International Protocol and Etiquette. We will embark into a fascinating journey that will show us what is these two terms are about. And I am thrilled to be joined by a true maestro of diplomatic finesse, Melissa Sayers, a renowned expert in international protocol, alongside my co-host Maria, who just came back from Mexico and be heading to Brazil pretty soon. Welcome, Melissa, and hello, Maria.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with you, ladies, and we're all M's, 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 M's. So this is the three
Yes.
musketeer days. Yeah.
Oh, yes, I didn't even realize. Okay, wonderful. Now, I don't know where to start, but you're going to help me because we know for sure that there in the global business arena, we see a lot of deals fall through unexpectedly. We've seen so many political gaffes that make headlines. And so often we don't think about the importance of protocol. We think it's a subtle thing, but it is a crucial discipline that we should be aware of if we are doing business internationally. What do you say, Melissa?
Absolutely. And that's one of the examples I use in my training. I love that example. I show all sides of the aisle, kind of all their mess ups. Protocol really came about from the Congress of Vienna that was, I believe, in the 15 or 1600s. They had to figure out a way to, they had all these kings and queens and dukes coming to meet, and they had to figure out a way of how do we put who goes first or whatever. So it really has started to keep order and to keep decorum and to keep respect. So protocol really comes and stems from respect. And for me, the difference between protocol and etiquette is that protocol are these rules that basically the entire world, especially in the diplomatic world, but you see it now in business and in academia, that we really live by. It is the way that people are seated. It's precedence. It's how flags are displayed. It's all this stuff. Doesn't matter if you go to Morocco or if you go to Monaco, the flags like of other countries when people are visiting, they're going to be displayed the same. Whereas etiquette is more so, it definitely is cultural, but it's based on the person, based on the people. If I go to your house may be a home where we don't wear shoes in the house. That's your etiquette versus my house, come on in, track the mud, it doesn't matter. Or if you're having a wedding with your family, the etiquette could be we do dancing at the end, whereas someone else's we have a cocktail reception. So etiquette is much more, it still very much matters, and you need to know your host and where you're going, but it's more fluid. We can't say from New York to Florida that etiquette is exactly the same versus protocol should be the same.
Uh-huh. So protocol, from what I understand, the protocol is more in politics and all government affairs and etiquette daily practice.
I would say so, but you also see it in business a lot, especially I'm from America, I'm based in Central Florida, especially working overseas in various regions, doing a lot of work in the Middle East and in
Uh-huh.
Asia. Protocol matters. How you give business cards in Asia is very important. In certain countries, you do it with two hands. It's really great if you have your language on one side and their language on the other. I tell this story, one story for y'all. My very first trip ever that I led, my delegation, I was in Seoul, then Beijing and Hong Kong. And I was with the president I was staffing. And this is my first time literally in Asia. And we had a greeting line, receiving line, which is also something that protocol we do. And somewhere along the line, we lost our translator. And so my president had a beautiful way of, he could pronounce languages so well. He sounded like a native tongue. He wasn't, but he sounded it. So we were in South Korea, and the Republic of South Korea, and this gentleman came up and gave him his business card, and my president said in beautiful way he could, thank you or something in Korean, and the gentleman spoke back because the gentleman thought he understood, and my president just stood there with the guy's business card, and the guy asked again or said his thing again, and we had no idea what he was saying. And this gentleman, probably in his 70s or 80s, was so offended, he pulled his fist back like he was going to punch my boss because he was so offended. And luckily, someone stepped in. He was asking for my president's business card in return. One, that's something that I should have known was brand new in protocol. You always give a card back. But two, that's how important that kind of stuff is. You could get punched in the face. So that's just a story that I like to share, that it does matter, and it is definitely a sign of respect.
Oh my goodness. So if you don't want to get punched on the face, definitely speak with Melissa before you travel to any country out there. We want you back safe. So,
Exactly.
That reminds me, talking about conflict and how people can misrepresent or misunderstand certain behaviors. And I guess what I heard you saying before, it seems like etiquette has more to do with the specific behaviors, whereas protocol are the rules. So I had heard, as you were talking about the protocol of giving a card, a business card with both hands, especially in Asia. I lived in Mexico for many years. And even though they're not quite as formal about handing over their business cards, I remember hearing a person that I was working with mention that he was annoyed at his American counterpart because the guy in front of everybody, he just kind of like started shuffling his business cards and throwing them on the table to give it to everybody. And everybody was like, and this guy was like, what the heck? He just kind of like threw his business cards down, like, we're not that important. Like, he didn't, it seemed like he was being dismissive of us.
Absolutely.
And there I had to work and say, no, 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 that was not it. He was just probably minimizing the importance of his own business card. But the way it comes across, I mean, you can have the best intention when it comes to your behavior, but the way it comes across can be totally offensive because, I'm trying to minimize the importance of my business card, but I don't realize that I'm offending you because it looks like I'm minimizing your importance by throwing the card at you.
Exactly. And the other thing, we in America, like, we like to take notes, and taking notes kind of shows you that I care. But don't you dare write on someone's business card. That's a common practice here. Like, okay, Maria is here. She lived in Mexico. She's like, I would totally do that. But oh my goodness, talk about another offense. And you literally are supposed to put the business cards out on the table in order. You really study them. Don't, so it's those little things can make or break business deals.
So is that considered etiquette or protocol? The different rules of managing business cards. What would you consider
That's
that?
still, I would still consider that protocol.
Okay.
That's that country's, understanding their protocol, their protocols. That would fall into what I would used to do would be a protocol brief. But that is a good point because it does kind of vary from, the US. It's hard to count the US in with any of this mix because we're so, not, I don't want to say not refined, but we're still such a baby country compared to everywhere else. But yeah, in most areas you don't write on the business cards, and you definitely don't just shove them in your pocket or anything.
so what would you suggest to anyone going on a mission, going on a trip as far as business, either meeting high profile people or just going to do presentation as an example for sales product or services? What would you recommend?
I mean, there are many trained protocol officers like me. I'm a certified protocol officer. We went to a school in Washington, D.C. So there are companies like mine where you can get on the phone with me. We can do a brief. There's great books out there. Obviously, Kiss, Bow, Shake Hands, Do's and Don'ts, Do's and Taboos. There's Robert Hickey, a good friend of mine. He has a book of all honorifics. So if you're going, especially like again in the Middle East, if you're working with sheikhs and emir, like all these different titles, everybody's an HRH. Like how, what do you do? So you reach out and you do your research, even if it's just touring. You need to look and see what you're doing. Once again, it's sign of respect. If you want to be successful in business, don't travel without having at least done some research.
Well, as far as the rest of the world, like you said, we are still baby country, and we do things differently. For anyone out there watching us or listening to us, can you walk us through the American protocol or even etiquette, whichever you choose? What would it be? Let's say a networking event. Let's start there. A networking event. What should I do if I am going to an American networking event? I don't know anything about, or I don't know much about the culture. Where do I start? What do I do?
So an American networking event would probably fall on the side of etiquette, because you're going to look of what region are you going to? Are you going to the Northeast? Are you going to the South? Are you going to Central? Where are you going? Like if you're in the South, if you're especially one of the deep South, like you're not going to rush things. You're not going to, these people, they take their time, but it's also kind of known that a lot of things that are said, maybe they don't necessarily mean. They'll say bless your heart, and of course, but there's no that there's gatekeeping there. Whereas if you're up in New York at a networking event, they want to be the guy that gets all the business cards. They want to do wheel and deal. I lived in DC for many years, and the joke was always shake your hand. What do you do? What can you do for me? And oh yeah, what's your name? Like that's how it worked there. So I think that goes more along the lines of etiquette if you're somewhere new. But I think also people are, aside from the gentleman that almost punched my boss, people are generous and people understand that, like, I have never been to Alabama. I don't know what y'all's etiquette is here. What can you guide me? Or did I just make a faux pas? Like, what did I do? And people are very forgiving. I think if you just kind of ask on site, like, how does it work here? And just to kind of go in without the attitude that you know everything. If you go in with a little bit of humility and curiosity, that will go a long way from my own experience, because I don't know a lot. So I've had to do that a number of times.
Absolutely. I know you were recently in Switzerland, I believe. Was it Switzerland or France?
Most recently, I was in France in June, but I was in Switzerland. I was in Davos and Zurich in January. So take your pick.
Tell me.
Do you have a story, like a fun story?
I'm curious.
Oh yeah, I'm like, you must have lots of great stories of people that have either shared with you or that you might have been privy to at some point.
Oh, goodness gracious. Let me think. I mean, I have my own personal story of like literally falling down the escalator at well, here's a fun story. It's not super protocol based, but I was meeting up with my boss who came from The Hague, he and his wife, and I did not. This is the other thing, like if you are in charge of a delegation, if you're looked at as a point person, you better know all the details. You better get on top. I didn't book this cute little boutique hotel that my counterpart booked. Well, the boutique hotel in Paris that my counterpart booked, my boss gets in from The Hague, like they do not have dry cleaning. They did not like want to help me. They are nothing they could do. And my boss had a wrinkled suit that he needed for that night. And so I am in Paris. I don't speak French. And I also have to go do some touring with my boss. So I am running through the streets of Paris with a suit and his wife's dress, and I am just kind of spinning on a dime, thinking, what am I going to do? And I'm walking through the streets, and the dry cleaners were all closed. Like afternoon after 12, they shut down. And I saw a clothing shop, and I was like, "Parlez-vous English?" And she's like, "Yes." And I was like, "Is there any way that you could steam these two items for me? Like, do you have a steamer? Here is some money. Like, I will be like, I promise." Like, and so literally, like, it was like an act of faith. I left like his clothes with them. I said, I will pay you, big whatever. And for 5 hours, I came back and I got the items. They were steamed and perfect, and everything worked out. But those kind of things are really funny, because you're just, it's you've got to think on your feet. That's one area that was a stressful moment, because like I can't leave the man naked and I can't leave him wrinkled. So what are we going to do?
That was quick thinking, man. I gotta admire it. That's great that you did that.
Another time we were doing work in Oman, and I don't speak Arabic, and I'm a woman like in the Middle East, and we were going to meet with the minister of higher education, and we had some fantastic gifts made. Gift giving is very huge. There's a lot of research that needs to be done when you're doing gift giving. And I worked with an amazing gentleman in DC that did so many gifts for the presidents and for princesses and all this stuff. And I had all these gifts created, and my gifts were locked up somewhere in a FedEx or a DHL. And it was like 7 a.m. in the morning. The place wasn't open. Nobody was there, and I am panicking. And so this is where relationship building comes in. Like, I built a relationship with the hotel staff. I was kind coming in. I was kind with everything I did. I tipped generously, and joyfully. And so they actually drove me around, just myself, tracked down the owner of the DHL and got the huge gold plate that I had shipped over. So that was another time that I had like a mini panic attack that what is happening. And then another fun gift thing is I traveled with a bust of George Washington, like about this big, in a carry-on bag from Florida to California. And so that was really fun to get through TSA. So gift giving is really interesting. And relationships really matter.
Well, let me ask you another question, because this would come up, and I have a story. There was a guy an American guy, and when it comes to gesturing, that can be a little tricky. And in Mexico, sometimes people, when they say thank you, like from car to car, they'll go like this, like they're tipping their hat. But a lot of, some people might think like, what is this gesture? So there was this guy I knew, and he's like, Maria, the other day I'm driving and I let somebody go by, and the guy goes like this to me. So I flipped him the bird. And I was like, Reed, they were thanking you. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, they were thanking you. He's like, this isn't thank you. This is thank you. This looks like, something bad. And I'm like,
that's an etiquette thing. Yeah, that's an etiquette thing. I tell you. Well, my first time as I did a service trip it was, I think, Honduras, possibly. I can't remember, but the okay sign, I think it was the okay sign, actually was like calling for prostitutes. So like, don't, A-okay, like in the US, like it's A-okay. Don't do that, or thumbs up, or something crazy like that. So yeah, gesturing super matters. It's nuts. It's like how much it matters. And I do have a story. I do have a protocol story for you that was crazy. So in the Asian culture, a lot of times you do business over big dinners and a lot of drinking, and there's a lot of toasting. You give toast. That's what you do. And the gentleman that was hosting us, the VIP, was there. And Mona, I have a funky personality and I'm fun. And so I was on the other side of the table with, the staffers that were my level. It was a big round table, and my president was nearby. And I think the gentleman, the VIP, he gave a toast, and then he asked me to give a toast. He looked to me next. You kind of hold the glass in your hand, and it's like he said, your turn. Well, I gave a toast and then I passed it off. Later on, my president was incredibly upset with me, and he said, Melissa, why did you give a toast before I gave a toast? And I said, sir, he had every right to, because he didn't see the man ask me. I said, the only reason I did that was because he literally asked me, and you missed that moment. But talk about going out of protocol. That if the guy didn't ask me, that is a huge no-no. Like, it's seniority first. But that was a moment where I'm like, oh my goodness, I did not go step over you, sir. I only did it because I was asked. And to be prepared to do toast is important too.
Absolutely. I always tell people, listen, if you're doing any work outside of your little box, you better know the etiquette, you better know the protocol, because these are so important and they go hand in hand. And I do see the need, and you may echo this, Melissa, I do see the need for companies, for schools, for government officials. I do recommend for them to get trained in these, definitely these two topics, because they are extremely important if you're doing business outside of your town or outside of your city.
And it can make or break your relationship, like you said. I remember a case where a Peruvian was in Mexico, and one of the employees would pick her up and take her to the office. And she told me, she's like, I'm a little upset because the guy doesn't greet me when I get into the car. And we have this uncomfortable silence all the way to the office. And the guy told me separately, he's like, this lady, she gets in the car, she doesn't greet me, and we have this uncomfortable silence all the way to the office. And I had to tell her, I said, listen, here in Mexico, the person who gets in, last one in, is the one who's responsible for greeting.
Mm,
First one out says goodbye, but you take it for granted. Who's the first one who has to initiate a greeting? And it's two Latin American countries. Who would have thought, right? And
right.
so things get lost in translation. So once she knew that it was on her, she felt bad because she was judging the guy, and she's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, it was me. I was the one who should have said hello first, right?"
That's something that I love about Mona. Mona brings women and people together of other cultures, of so many backgrounds, religions, and just ethnicities. And it's a judgment free zone actually. And I think that when you're able, especially when you're welcoming people and working with people on your territory, on your side of the aisle, to give a little bit of grace and to understand that maybe there is a barrier, maybe there's a gesture, maybe men don't shake women's hands, or maybe like hugging is what you're supposed to do even if you felt uncomfortable. But to Mona is like the perfect example of someone that gives so much grace and has a lot of curiosity, and I think that leads to success in international business.
That's a really good point. And I think that one of the things that I always bring to the table when doing any kind of intercultural training is you need to assume positive intent. People don't go out of their way to offend you.
Mhm.
And sometimes people don't know what they don't know. You shouldn't be offended that they don't know it, and be willing in good spirit to teach them, because not everybody knows everything. We certainly don't know everything. So being open to teaching and being open to learning, I think it's key. Wouldn't you agree, Melissa?
I completely stay curious. The benefit of the doubt, there's these cliche terms like, that's, but they're there for a reason because they actually matter and they actually work. Do unto others like the golden rule as you want done to you, like it sounds simple enough and we've heard it enough, but honestly, like, how do you want to be treated? Like, do you want, maybe like, I know that I'm an extrovert, but so many introverts are judged because they are maybe standoffish. They stand to the side of the room. They don't, it's not that they're rude. It's not anything. It's just they weren't born with Melissa's personality. And so to judge and to, really make an assumption on that is so unfair. So yeah, I completely agree with you, Maria, completely.
Well, I wish we had more time to discuss this, and hopefully, this has been an eye opening discussion for you, whether you are a seasoned diplomat or international business professional, or simply curious about the hidden rules that govern global interactions. Melissa, where can people find you? Because, as I mentioned, you are the expert in international protocol.
They can find me at Melissa at styersconsulting.com. That's my email address. Just shoot me an email, or I would love for you to connect with me on LinkedIn. So just find me on LinkedIn, Melissa Styers. Always happy to have these conversations.
All right, excellent. If you're about to get on a plane to do business, Melissa will help you navigate the complex world of international protocol and etiquette. There's a lot to discuss, a lot to learn. Feel free to reach out to her. I thank you so much, Melissa, for your time. I know you're very busy. I thank you also, Maria. I know you're getting ready to travel. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and be blessed.
Yes.
Also,
Thank
be
you.
global, be global, okay?
Be curious.
Curious, yes. Thank you so much. Bye bye.